The first thing a GM of a hotel did every morning was check TripAdvisor and see if they had a bad review from the day before from TripAdvisor, because they knew they had to get 10 positive reviews to push that negative review off the first page. Now, if you had a real-time profile on every customer and you were capturing every engagement, digital and human assisted, and you knew and you could correct that right away, you should never have a negative review. You've had plenty of opportunities to correct that negative sentiment and turn it positive and get them to come directly to you when they're ready to plan and book that next trip.
Hey everybody, welcome to the AWS Humans in the Loop podcast. I'm Shea, a solutions architect at AWS, and joining me today is Greg Land, global industry leader for hospitality here at AWS.
Thanks, Chris. Happy to be here, and I love talking about this stuff.
Hey, welcome to the show. It's great to have you. So, Greg, tell me what a day in the life looks like as global industry lead for hospitality.
Yeah, I have to say, I love what I do. I absolutely love what I do because it kind of culminates everything I've learned over a 30-plus year career in travel and hospitality. But my role at AWS, I'm responsible for go-to-market strategy for hospitality. I'm responsible for any industry solutions that we bring to market, whether it's built on AWS services or done in collaboration with a technology partner. And then lastly is just kind of business development support for our teams in the field. So I kind of bounce around the world doing business development support and EBCs, meeting with partners. But then a big part of it right now is how do we scale that? As our industry vertical continues to grow, and as we have more and more mature customers that want to move faster with us, how do we scale that? So a lot of it right now is really spent building content that we can replicate, doing one-to-many enablement with the field, and then just trying to build assets, everything from demos to first call decks and things like that, and record videos to demonstrate how to deliver it, to get our account managers and our solutions architects in the field better prepared where they can deliver the message themselves and not have to have us by their side for that business development support. So a lot of time spent right now on scaling the business.
Yeah, a lot of different hats you wear in that
Yeah,
case.
yeah, but it makes the job fun.
Absolutely. And I have to personally say I'm rather envious of the travel and hospitality vertical because it sounds like you guys get to work on all the fun stuff. Cruises, casinos, hotels.
Absolutely. That's what I like to say as well.
Yeah. So how's that been for you? How did you get your start in the travel and hospitality industry?
Gosh, so go back 30 years. And my university training is actually in accounting and computer science. I got a dual major in accounting and computer science. After my master's degree in accounting, I actually started my career as a CPA. And the firm that I was with, American Airlines, happened to be one of our biggest clients. So I was based in their Dallas office. I was doing audit and what we called at the time kind of computer auditing. It was kind of auditing through the black box, as you will, for American Airlines. And after about 3 years, I decided I'd much rather be inside a client working. And so when I looked across the client base that I had at that point in time in Dallas, American Airlines was a really interesting company. They were growing like crazy. This was in the early 90s. And I ended up getting a job there in financial planning and analysis. And so that's kind of what first got me into the travel industry. And then when they spun off the Sabre organization, which was their travel technology subsidiary, I went with the technology side of the business, kind of flexing my computer science muscle, and was there for 10 years. Started out running financial services. And by the end of my 10-year career there was vice president of product marketing, running all the different products and solutions that we connected from airlines to hotels to cruise lines, car rental companies. So that's where I really got a lot of the in-depth knowledge and expertise in all the various systems that are out there running all these travel and hospitality businesses.
So you have exposure to every possible facet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then that's when I got recruited to go to Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. And I went to Wyndham as Senior Vice President of Global Sales and Distribution, more on the commercial side. Was in that role for 5 years. Then IBM, back to the technology side of the industry, running their industry vertical. And then 4.5 years ago, a friend of mine who was already working at AWS called me. This role was open. She's like, "You're a perfect fit." I was really intrigued by everything I'd heard about working inside Amazon, and I wanted to check it out. And so to sum all that up, I've kind of spent 30 plus years meandering across the travel and hospitality industry, both in technical and non-technical roles. And I use every bit of it in my job today.
That's fantastic to hear. Very fitting for the travel industry to have traveled around so much, right?
Absolutely, and you're right. It really is. It really is a very fun industry to work in and work with, and that's what makes me really love what I do.
Fantastic. So I would love to hear from you how things have changed throughout your 30-year career in the travel and hospitality industry. I think one of the biggest things we're seeing across the board right now
Yeah.
is AI, but
Yeah.
I imagine up until this point, there's been a lot of change leading up to it too.
I mean, when you just think of it from the technical perspective, whether you're talking about an airline or a hotel or a rail company or even the car rental companies, they all had their primary platforms on mainframe. And many of them were using some very old languages that don't even exist anymore. The skill sets aren't out there anymore. And it was just an industry that really didn't invest in new technology very quickly. And so when cloud even came on the horizon, they all had so much tech debt. And it really was the pivot point of the pandemic that kind of gave them a chance to reset. And those that had stability from a financial perspective and had the cash flow, they used that downtime to invest and accelerate their migration to cloud and to really start modernizing those systems, as they migrated to cloud. And that was when we really started seeing a big shift. And we're very lucky that in my industry vertical, we've got 9 of the top 10 largest hotel groups in the world on AWS. 5 of them are all in on AWS. We've got almost all the top airlines in the world operate on AWS. But it's been interesting to see how they've gone from this really, really heavy mainframe environment. And just in the last couple of years, we're finally seeing them shake a lot of that tech debt and get into the cloud in the way that they can innovate and move more quickly. Now, from the non-technical perspective, um, all the things we've talked about for so long. I mean, when I was as far back as when I was at American Airlines, we were talking about merchandising travel and what does modern retailing look like for an airline? When I was at Sabre, we talked a lot about how do we shift from just being a distributor of travel to being a merchandiser of travel, and how do we change up our solution? And we never could quite make the shift because the data tools just weren't there. And personalization was something we dreamed about. Being able to move up the travel value chain, as we call it, being able to engage with the consumer when they just first start thinking about traveling or dreaming about their next trip. We had no way to really engage with them then. I mean, this was pre-online travel agencies. This was really before the internet was in every household. And so 25, 30 years ago, we would talk about these concepts as our kind of art of the possible kind of thing if the systems were ever there and the technology was ever there. And so, we had all these big ideas, and now looking back, it's like all of that is possible. Things that we just thought about on whiteboards 30 years ago, it's all possible now with the data that we have and the AI solutions and services that we have. So it's great for me because I've been in this industry for such a long time to be able to look back and see all those things we talked about 20, 30 years ago and see how it's all possible today.
And in hindsight too, what a perfect time to get rid of a lot of that tech debt too, right? Modernizing as you're getting ready for really the AI
Absolutely.
boom we're seeing. It's perfect timing. And now you can build almost at the speed of putting marker to whiteboard.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy to me still.
I mean, it did take some effort just to get through the migration phase. And some of them were able to migrate and modernize simultaneously, but a lot of them did it sequentially. And to get off some of those old platforms, it was a real challenge for them, and a lot of the tools and solutions that we used across the industry weren't even ready for cloud yet. I mean, even today, a lot of the systems used at the property level for hotels still have to be on-prem because they're server-based, and there's not even a SaaS version that can run in the cloud yet. So we're about 50% there with the systems that are on property. But when you look at the big tech debt, like the big mainframe platforms, Scott Kirby, the president of United Airlines, just made a big announcement in like the last 4 months where they finally had that cut over to get their last systems off mainframe that were still in TPF. And so great customer of ours. We do a lot of great innovative work with United Airlines. And this was one where they leveraged all the AI and machine learning tools that we have, including Amazon Bedrock and AWS Transform, to do all that translation work. And what would have been a multi-year project, which they just couldn't make the investment in, they literally did in a matter of weeks. So they're now completely off mainframe, completely off TPF. It puts everything in the cloud where it's tightly integrated. They've already got all their data migrated, all the ID resolution work done. So now they're at a point where they've got everything tightly integrated in an AWS instance. They'll be able to run super fast with innovation.
That's fantastic. And think about how much more efficient they can be moving forward, how they can focus
Yeah.
on improving the customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's wonderful.
And then when I look at my hotel customers, everybody from Marriott to Hilton to Wyndham, they really took the pandemic with the low occupancy they had at the hotels as a reset point. And that's where they really invested a lot of their time in getting infrastructure right and migrated to the cloud, getting all their primary systems, the loyalty platform, the reservation system, the property management system, get that stuff migrated to the cloud, and then really start modernizing those systems. They were the ones that were the most hesitant with customer data. And if you think about it, I mean, you look at Marriott, Marriott has 30 plus brands, and they continue to acquire brands every year. Aggregating that data and putting some governance in place and hygiene to keep it updated as you move forward, it's a big challenge. So the hotels had some pretty heavy lifting because of the multi-brand and just the distributed systems they work with down to the property level. You had data in pockets all over the place. But we finally have, probably just in the past year, we have some of the large hotel groups that have their data fully aggregated. Most of them used our AWS entity resolution to complete the ID resolution aspect of it, and really get their data centralized and architected at an enterprise level, where now it can not only be consumed for sales and marketing purposes, but also to deliver personalized service all the way down to the property level. So it's pretty cool what we're seeing happen right now.
It's fantastic. And it's a uniquely cool vertical for me, hotel customers.
Yeah.
I have travel and hospitality kind of in my DNA, right? There's an anecdote that I'll share. My parents met in 1993 in the Marriott data center in Maryland.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm kind of a child of the hospitality industry
Yeah.
in a really exciting way. So it's always been very cool to see it come full circle, right? It's such a cool industry to me.
Yeah, it really is.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about how it's, both covering the travel customer experience, but also the traveler experience, right? How are we seeing changes? What changes do you anticipate in the future to the future of, hotel customers, airline customers? What's that
Yeah.
going to look like?
I think that has been the biggest aha moment for us, even just in this past year, because just all my years in the travel and hospitality industry, I've always closely followed research from the retail industry. Because typically, as far as new consumer-facing technology rolling out, retail and banking tend to drive changes first with the consumer and get the consumer to change their expectations. Within about 12 to 18 months, that consumer would have the same expectation of their travel providers, whether it be moving to self-service tools, moving to mobile app, biometrics, what have you. When it comes to AI tools, it was different. We saw with a lot of the publicly available generative AI tools, especially everything from ChatGPT to Perplexity, um, travel was the number one use case. And we saw this start creeping up in late 2023, early 2024. And there's some great Adobe Insights data out there that shows for the full year of 2025, from 2024 to 2025, full year number, um, travel planning on publicly available AI tools increased 3,500%. And retail was number two, banking was number three. So and you think about it, when a consumer plans a trip, there's lots of data, US Travel Association, US Tour Operators Association, that says first they shop and research the destination, then they research what activities they want to do, and they look at anywhere from 20 to 25 websites before they ever think about how they're going to get there and where they're going to stay. So all that upstream activity, the hotelier, the airline, the ground transportation company, they don't have insights into what you've already looked at and what you might be thinking about you want for that trip. So when you go to one of these generative AI tools, you can put that prompt in as broadly as you want. I want, a 2-week vacation somewhere in the Caribbean near a beach. I want to be at a resort. It's a family of four. You can put in as much as you want. So it can go very broad and pull back all the possible combinations from step one. So you get this amazing convergent think tank that you can then narrow down until you start getting maybe recommendations on which resort to stay at or which airline has the best fares for getting there. So it really is perfect the way that it's set up, but consumers have been drawn to it so quickly The more surprising number, not only was the use up 3,500% year over year, we saw the satisfaction number by the end of 2025 at 89%. 89% of consumers using AI-based tools for travel planning, and that can be anything from researching the destination, the food and beverage options, property recommendations, what have you, but 89% satisfaction with that tool. So you look at how much all the airlines and the hotel companies have invested in their own websites and their own mobile apps and the hundreds of millions they spend on acquiring customers through digital channels to get them to come directly to their digital assets. And consumers are going out and using these publicly available AI tools. Um, Now, what makes that difficult for our customers, and this is where we're starting to use MCP servers and things like that, is if a consumer uses ChatGPT or Perplexity or any of those publicly available AI tools to plan their trip, and they get a recommendation for my property, I have no traceability to know how I acquired that customer. They may go to my contact center to book. They may go to an online travel agency to book. They may go to a traditional travel agency to book. They may go to my website. They may go to my mobile app, but I'm completely blind as to how I acquired that customer. And at least if they were going through Google or Bing or something, I could at least track where they came from and maybe track it back to an online ad or something like that. So that's what's made it really challenging right now. So we're now starting to work with them on MCP servers and how they can organize their property attributes and other data to really kind of map a little bit better, but also to provide some context to the LLM about this is what we're looking for, bring back recommendations in the context of XYZ.
Yeah. And how are customers looking to solve for that issue of traceability, right? Being able to see where a lead originates from with AI tooling right now. Like, do you see a good solution for that being implemented today?
Um, it's We're doing a lot of work with MCP right now. That's the main. They're all kind of stuck between, do I use MCP servers to try to influence how I engage with LLMs, or do I do an LLM plugin directly to my mobile app or my website? And so we have both of those being trialed right now. In fact, I have two of my big hotel customers that just in the last 30 days have started a pilot having a ChatGPT plugin in their mobile app, where you can kind of have the context of their mobile app and their properties, but still engage with ChatGPT to get the recommendations from the LLM. So we see both of those kind of playing out in parallel right now. I think when you look at, like, some of the really large loyalty programs out there, whether it's with an airline or a hotel company, I think if you've got a captive audience who has a mileage base with you or a points base with you they're looking to spend, you might wanna build your own kind of, LLM tool like that inside of there to get people to come there and do that work, that planning right there within your loyalty platform. Otherwise, I think it's gonna be a balance of, do I plug in the LLM to my app if I've got a captive audience coming to my app, or do I use MCP? Now, the great thing is we're starting to see some of the technology partners we work with, especially those that build reservation systems and property management systems, starting to look at how they can embed the MCP services in their solution and be able to do some of this work in their solution. And so I think right now there's a lot of debate going on for all the different types of providers we work with as to, should there be some of these MCP servers and even agentic AI tools that are common at an industry level? And then which ones can really differentiate a brand or a product that the airline or the hotel company should keep relative to their own platform?
So, what differentiates customers in the travel and hospitality space that are really succeeding on their AI adoption journey and those who might be struggling a bit? What common patterns for success are you seeing in the industry?
I think the customers that got their act together the earliest around their data, we all know, AI is an important input to the recipe of any AI. And so I think those customers that really got their act together with their customer data, and got it architected at enterprise level early on, and kind of started being able to test that out, are the ones that we've seen be the most successful. But I think too, we just have some customers that are a little more risk adverse than others. And I mean, I'll step back to a story from the other end of the spectrum that kind of highlights this. Booking.com, another great customer of ours in the hospitality space. We launched Bedrock in early 2023. They came to us and we built the first prototype for an AI chatbot for their shopping on their website in April of 2023. I mean, they were at the very, very early cusp. And they knew they didn't have customer data to drive any kind of personalization or make any kind of assumptions with the AI about what the shopping persona was. So in those early prototypes that we built in our generative AI innovation center with them, um, they had the shopper, the user, self-select their shopping persona. It's a family. It's a single female traveling alone, and so you had a menu of shopping personas to choose from. So it started with that assumption and that kind of baseline profile since they didn't have enough customer to make any assumptions about what your profile might look like. And then as you went through the chatbot conversation, with that as your lead in, it then kind of transformed and added to that profile based on what it learned from the exchange. And by the time you got down to selecting a destination, it started populating the main frame of the screen with property recommendations. At that point, we used generative AI to then customize both the property image and the property description, because there's plenty of data that shows good quality property images and good quality property descriptions is what drives online conversion, both with a hotel website or with an OTA. And so that was kind of the first iteration. We probably migrated them across 3 different LLM models, um, in the first 6 months as they kinda fine-tuned to see how they wanted that dialogue to look like with the consumer before they got to displaying those customized photos and property images. Um, they've iterated on that. It's in market in Europe. They've iterated that over 3 years. Here in the last 6 months, they've just started infusing real customer data into the equation. So that's a great example of a customer that was willing to take the risk. They knew they wanted to completely transform their their consumer experience, their user experience with generative AI, and they weren't afraid to take the leap. And they just made the tweaks, like picking your own persona. They made those tweaks early on in the process. My hotel customers, on the other hand, with multiple brands, worrying about brand image, knowing their customer data wasn't ready, they held back on anything consumer facing and just focused on internal applications first and using it more for IT efficiencies and maybe some internal processes in some of their staff groups and things like that. But, so I think it does. I think you've got the risk averse and the risk taking customer, but I think the common equation was how they handled the issue of data
Yeah, and
relative
I'd
to
love
AI.
to double click on the data strategy
Yeah.
piece too. What makes for a successful AI-friendly data strategy?
I was just with a customer in Germany last week and presenting their top 40 executives, and we stopped and had a conversation around exactly that because they're just now in the process of aggregating their data, migrating it to cloud. They're gonna be putting it on Snowflake, on AWS, and a lot of people are really uncomfortable letting go of ownership of the data. And as I'm presenting and talking about this and talking about AI readiness, the CIO kinda did time out and stood up and kinda said, "This is why we're doing this. This is, some of the heavy lifting we have to get through to be really ready to move quickly with AI." And so I think that's a great example of you've got company cultures where people were hoarding data. A lot of these, companies don't have any kind of governance around data. They're not really data-driven companies to begin with. And when you look across travel and hospitality, their focus is operating their customer-facing business. And, I mean, I worked inside an airline, I worked inside a hotel company. We would freely admit technology was not our core value. Technology was not a huge strength, and it was always kind of an afterthought, and data was even a bigger afterthought. And, yes, they had to use this data, and they had to have this data readily available, but nobody was putting any kind of strategy around it. And so just in the last couple of years, we've started seeing chief data officer added to the staff. But up until probably 2 years ago, if you asked most of my customers who owns customer data strategy, you got this. You couldn't point to one person, and they gradually have got a better understanding of what it means. And through a lot of workshops with us and a lot of thinking in a very forward thinking manner about how they're going to have this data organized, if they ultimately want to have a personalization vision that includes delivering personalized service all the way down to like the property level or at a check-in counter or a gate at an airport. Um, that the data's got to be almost real time, and you've got the care and feeding of the reservation from the time it's booked until the day of travel, and then you've got to be able to know what's going on with that person all the way through that trip. And so being able to have access to that data from every system, every touch point. And so we're just now seeing some really good, solid customer data strategies out there. But it took a lot of learning. It took a lot of learning from a lot of them. But it really is, it's got to include governance. It's got to include ongoing hygiene in real time. And you almost have to have a top-down kind of education for everybody as to why data is important to every aspect of their business. So they're starting to get it, and AI was the real turning point that made them realize they've got to have this done before they can engage fully with AI.
Absolutely. Where do you see the biggest change happening in the travel industry in the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years because of
Oh
AI?
gosh. So back to that comment about things we only thought about 30 years ago and now it's possible. Um, you look at some of the really creative stuff we're doing today. I mean, just if I look at it from a travel and hospitality customer staff perspective, we're doing things like with TUI, the big tour operator in Germany and the UK. They employed Amazon Bedrock to generate all their content. They do a lot of dynamic tour packaging, and so they literally customize the images for the dynamic tour you put together based on what you select for that tour package.
So walk me through dynamic tour packaging. What is
Yeah.
that?
So, for example, they have dynamic tour packaging where they have a selection of both charter airlines and commercial airlines that they have inventory on. They have a selection of hotels. So it's kind of an à la carte method. So instead of just selecting that tour package to Jamaica, for example, and they've already predefined what airline you're going to be on, what resorts you're going to stay at, what activities are included, and maybe there's some add-ons. You can kind of custom build it. And so you can pick from menu A, menu B, menu C, and kind of build your tour package yourself. And so it brings back a display that is customized based on what you've built around that dynamic tour package.
Okay, so it's like a customizable way to
Customizable
build
way
your
to do it.
tour.
So things like that. But I think the holy grail that everybody still looks to is just what we broadly call personalization, right? And for 20 years now, personalization really only translated into email campaigns and things like that. More activities on the sales and marketing side. But now we're talking about with real-time customer profiles in place and with AI being able to do sentiment analysis in milliseconds across every level, every instance of engagement that brand has had with you, whether it was through the mobile app, the website, maybe you sent a nasty email the week before, maybe you had a good or a bad conversation with the contact center agent, front desk clerk, what have you, complained about your room to the general manager, anything that's captured across any channel. If you've got all that funneling into that real-time customer profile, and doing instantaneous sentiment analysis, you can now be prepared literally for what we've called next best action for years. You can now be readily available that the next person, whether it's through a digital channel, a contact center agent over the phone, a front desk clerk, or maybe even a housekeeper at the hotel, they could have access to information to know Greg's not happy with us. And here was his last interaction. See how you can make that better. So that's where we're going to see customer experience just go to a whole nother level as we see more and more of these travel and hospitality customers of ours get real-time profiles in place that are architected to engage across every single channel that you engage with a customer.
Fantastic. So it sounds like that hotel who forgot to leave the mint on my pillow, their days are soon numbered.
Yeah.
They'll be hearing from me.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, but it's fantastic because um, think about all the opportunities you have to continually engage and to correct if you know there's a negative engagement. I mean, when I was working for Wyndham Hotels and I would be out with our general managers on property, which I got to do quite often as the leader for global sales, um, the first thing a GM of a hotel did every morning was check TripAdvisor and see if they had a bad review from the day before from TripAdvisor, because they knew they had to get 10 positive reviews to push that negative review off the first page. Because back then, this was, you know, early 2000s. Back then, that was the primary place most people went for hotel sentiment information. And and that literally was what they did. That was the first thing they did every day. Now, if you had a real-time profile on every customer and you were capturing every engagement, digital and human assisted, and you knew and you could correct that right away, you should never have a negative review. You should, by the time somebody leaves your property, you've had plenty of opportunities to correct that negative sentiment and turn it positive. But then you want to be able to keep it positive even after the trip and get them to come directly to you when they're ready to plan and book that next trip.
That's a super interesting anecdote how one negative review is 10 times more impactful than a positive review. That's
It can be. It
yeah.
can be. And you think about it, even when you look on social media today, you look at your friends' pictures on Instagram or TikTok or wherever, um, you're always drawn in by the negative story,
Of course.
aren't you? Yeah, yeah. The picture that somebody posted of mold in their bathroom shower at a hotel, or some awful experience they had getting on or off a ship, or it's always the negative stories that you're drawn to. So I think it's just, I hate to say human nature, but I think it's just those are the things that strike our interest. So it's hard to recover from those things. But a great example is, as we talk about this, you know, we have more and more tools where we want to shorten those queues with contact centers, but you still have plenty of people that still want to call the contact center and talk to a human before they make a purchase or if they're having trouble or something. But think about it. If you've got this single profile and you're capturing every engagement you have with a customer, both digital and human assisted, and all that's being captured, when you call a contact center, as soon as you authenticate by your phone number, your loyalty number, anything, that they can quickly look at that profile in milliseconds, do a sentiment analysis across your last 10 interactions, draft talking points for that agent as to here's why Greg's calling, and here's 10 talking points to help you recover and turn him positive on our product or our brand, and have those pop up before they ever pick up the phone. Think about how powerful that is, and think about how good it makes that employee feel to empower them to not only be prepared that this is an angry customer calling, be prepared for that, but here's 10 things you can lean in with, really to kind of change his sentiment. It's going to change everything with how we engage with the traveler.
And what a huge win-win for both the customer and the customer support agent.
Absolutely. And anything I talk about relative to customer experience, there's an employee experience behind it, right? And I think finally we saw, as we saw a lot of acceleration in customer facing capabilities and solutions right after COVID, um, we finally started seeing all of our travel and hospitality customers also quickly catch up with employee solutions as well, realizing that, behind every customer experience, there's an employee experience as well. And especially now with AI, we're trying to bake that in as well, where if there's something that even powers a self-service option, you better make sure you're also pushing that same information to somebody on the employee side that may need to step in, because when they step in, that guest or that traveler isn't going to want to have to kind of rehash everything. And just like my story with the contact center having talking points pop up, you should be able to push information to that employee, whether they're at the airport, on property, in a contact center, to have them be prepared to know exactly what they're getting ready to face and not have to have that consumer start all over. I mean, nothing's more frustrating than to be transferred 2 or 3 times, and every time you have to start from square one explaining what your problem is.
Yeah, that's a universal challenge, right?
Absolutely.
Anytime
Any industry.
any industry whatsoever
Yeah.
is like you get in touch with a support rep and you have to re-explain your problem for what feels like the upteenth time. Being able to mitigate that is
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
So, just out of curiosity too, I'm wondering with your experience with the travel industry too, has that changed the way that you travel? Do you have any strategies, anything that you've learned that changes how you travel?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if I just think about airlines today, we have more disruption than ever right now with airlines, whether it's weather related, government shutdowns, wars, canceling flights here and there or disrupting flights here and there. We have more disruption than ever. And there's also higher load factors right now because during COVID, a lot of the airlines took capacity out of the sky and they've been very careful to only add back in the most efficient way. So we have load factors higher than air as well. So it's just a perfect recipe for disruption. And so I think you don't have to be super tech savvy, but if you're good with a mobile app, almost all the major airlines now provide capabilities on their mobile app that allow you to reaccommodate yourself. So I'm really good about setting all the alerts, making sure that I'm getting all those alerts for my flight leading up to my even 24 hours before. And as soon as you see there's a delay, like you can drill down on a lot of the mobile apps for the airlines and see where your inbound aircraft is coming from. And even though they maybe they haven't posted that your flight's delayed, you can see the inbound aircraft that's going to be assigned to your flight is going to be late coming in.
Oh, that's
So
brilliant.
you're probably gonna be delayed and they just haven't posted the delay for your flight yet. So you can kind of work backwards and kind of see, and there's everything's there in the mobile app to do that. And so I always check where the inbound flight's coming from and is it on time? So it's little things like that. Hotel world, I mean, in the hotel world, there's just so much great things going on. I mean, you can do check-in 24, 48 hours prior. A lot of them have now implemented complete floor plans where you can actually pick your own room. You can see what floor you're going to be on. Um, and many of them have implemented through technology partners of ours where you can do ID resolution, form of payment verification, everything through the mobile app pre-arrival. Now, I'm an early adopter of most technology, and so I'm very comfortable doing that. Not all consumers are comfortable doing that quite yet, but there are quite a few hotel chains now where you can do everything pre-arrival, do your check-in 24 to 48 hours before, activate your mobile key as soon as you're on property, and go straight to your room. You never go to a check-in counter. You never have to show your form of payment because it's already baked in, and you've authenticated that pre-arrival. I mean, not that I'm an introvert, as you could tell, but there's days where I've had a tough travel day. I don't even wanna have to go make small talk with somebody at a check-in counter, you know? Let me just go straight to my room, activate my mobile key, take a shower, and fall in bed. And so I love it. And now, like I said, not every consumer is comfortable with all that functionality quite yet, but I think we're seeing adoption of those types of capabilities across all of travel become more and more common. Now, the bigger leap is with things like biometrics. Um, I've not taken a flight in almost a year where I didn't board with biometrics.
So when you say biometric, is this gonna be like a thumbprint ID,
Facial
face
scan,
ID?
facial ID. The flight that United has this implemented at almost all their gates, at least domestically, and the flight that I boarded just the other day out of Newark, you had to have your passport. I was traveling international, so you had to have your passport in your hand open to the signature page, but you didn't have to show your boarding pass. They have an iPad set up at the gate. You look into the iPad, and I guess it scans both your face because they've already got my face connected to my boarding pass and my profile. It connects all the dots there and authenticates based on a facial scan. And I guess it's scanning enough to see that my passport is it's seeing that I've got a valid signature page open on my passport. And that's it. You don't even need a there is a gate agent standing there monitoring the process, but it's completely self-service with facial scans. Now, we've also just implemented touchless ID with TSA. Um, as I travel international, most airports in Europe that I go through, UK, Spain, Germany, they've all set up gates where I don't even talk to an immigration officer. I scan my passport, it takes my picture. They have my picture on profile, on file from a previous trip or from doing an online authorization like the UK requires now. And you go through a gate and the gate opens and you're free to go. You never even speak to an immigration officer. Now, the downside is if you're an avid traveler that likes to fill their passport with stamps, you also don't get your passport stamps. You literally scan your passport, takes a picture, the gate opens, and you go through. I mean, that started many years ago in Singapore, testing things like that. Sydney, Australia airport was testing things like that. That's pretty common now. And I'm hoping we're going to start seeing that in the US, but I think things like touchless ID with TSA is a step in that direction. So yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing the tools we have available to us now to really make that connected experience more seamless, and really get you through every step of the process. So
Wow, I really appreciate that insider look, right? I think that's a lot of helpful, almost like life hacks for traveling that I didn't consider.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I think the consumer, even some of the non-technical folks, and as you think about younger generations that are starting to travel now and take travel for granted, and they're not afraid to get out and take trips, um, they're also mobile savvy and so tech savvy. They're not going to hesitate to take that selfie and upload their face and do biometric check-in and things like that. So I think we're going to see the adoption just skyrocket on those types of things, which is a good thing because like this last month, the lines we've seen at TSA because of spring break and weather and government shutdowns, it's just been crazy. I mean, you've seen anywhere from 2 hours to 4 hours at some of the major airports. Think about it, if everybody was registered for touchless ID TSA PreCheck, we would all breeze through those checkpoints. And so I think as you see consumer adoption increase on a lot of those capabilities, and as we more broadly start implementing biometrics in all of our airports and all of our hotel check-in processes and car rental pickup and everything, even some of the car rental companies are starting to test biometric for leaving the garage with a car. So I think as all those things get better adoption from consumers, hopefully it means shorter lines and, and faster service for everybody.
I'll be stealing on this next time I'm stuck in line at TSA.
Yeah,
The future's coming, and I think it might be a very good thing.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think when you look at some of those processes where the biggest queues are lined up, um, not only things like biometrics, but even AI is now coming into play there as well. We work with several technology partners that offer conversational AI type solutions. A great one that I'll reference, we've worked with them for several years, a technology partner called NLX, and one of the early conversational AI tools out there. We implemented with two of the airline customers, literally while you're waiting in queue for the contact center, it'll give you the option to switch to your mobile phone, and they will send you a text on your mobile. You put in your mobile number, they send a text to your mobile number, and then they queue you from there, and they walk you through how to make whatever it is you're trying to change, how to do it yourself on the mobile app. So number one, it shortens the queue for that existing experience, but maybe it also gets you more comfortable with going to the mobile app directly and making your own change, whether it's changing your seat, figuring out something with check-in or even changing your flight. I mean, you can change your flight now, and I do that quite often where I have to change my flight, whether it's because of disruption or because my schedule's just changed, and you can do most of that on the mobile app yourself these days. But what this solution does that NLX has, it really does help shift that queue away from the contact center and also drive adoption for the mobile app. So it's kinda solving 2 problem statements.
It's fantastic. I know you mentioned earlier that Bedrock Agent Core and AWS Transform have been really impactful for travel customers. Have you seen any other services that have really resonated?
Yeah, absolutely. And Bedrock, of course, is the heart of everything we're doing with generative AI. But then now that we're starting to get into agentic AI solutions as well, I mean, just as soon as we announced Agent Core at our New York City summit, I think it was in July last year, within 30 days, I had customers building with that. And a great story there with Agent Core is I had one of my big hotel customers, franchise business. So they're working with, you know, first-time business owners in many cases that go the franchise route, and they have 7 different systems that their franchisees have to log into to get information on brand operations, brand standards, their financial metrics, things like that. And they didn't even have single sign-on set up yet for those 7 systems. So they took Agent Core and built kind of what I would call this framework for agentic solutions. And then they plugged in AI agents for all the different tasks that a franchisee may want to engage with those systems for. And then they laid natural language search on top of that, where some of these less savvy business owners can go in and just using natural language search through a single sign on through a portal, ask any question. When do my mattresses need to be upgraded? Am I meeting my brand standards for my signage? What are my latest metrics on occupancy and rate for the last 90 days? Anything. And it automatically, the agent in the background knows which system to go get that information from and pull it back through that portal. That's life changing for how these franchisees manage those businesses. So Agent Core is a big one. Everything we're doing with MCP servers is a big one. Hero Of course, that's the latest and greatest right now. They're all diving in with Kiro and looking out there. That's gonna help with agentic AI development. But, I think agentic AI is what really has caused this to really take off, especially in the travel and hospitality industry, and how they can leverage that because it kinda breaks it down into smaller bites. So they're all kinda re-architecting around that right now. But yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to see how much change there's gonna be and all the transformation that we can make across travel and hospitality with some of these latest services.
Absolutely. All this talking about travel makes me want to book my next trip.
Absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
super interesting to talk about. So, do you have any advice for customers who might maybe perceive themselves as still early in the AI adoption journey? Right. What advice do you have for them to get started? What's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, we typically tell customers, I mean, working like true Amazonians in the working backwards style that we do, we typically say, "Don't just look for something to go throw AI at." Step back, think about your most difficult problems that you have across your company, and let's define a use case. When we first launched Bedrock 3 years ago, and we were all making the big push with generative AI and educating all of our customers on generative I would tell my customers, "Go brainstorm your top 20 use cases." And most of them would come back, and maybe 2 of them really even needed generative AI. A lot of them you could maybe do with SageMaker on one of our existing SageMaker solutions, and so even when you take that approach, you're not always gonna see something that immediately needs the most advanced AI capabilities. But that was kinda how we started the conversations, and so I still do that today because you don't wa we try not to go and just throw technology at our customers, but really truly employ the working backwards, approach. And whether it's in an EBC or a workshop or what have you, we try to say, just what are some of those problem statements and use cases that you've thought of for years and there never was technology to solve because it's probably there now. And so we try to start with that approach, and it still seems to work well. I think that there are those that, the ones that say, "Oh, our board wants us to do something with AI." Um, those always tend to be a challenge
Yeah.
because you tend to go round and round just looking for the right use case that's gonna be successful. And the other thing I'd say is, even though hoteliers know their customers as hotel guests and airlines know their passengers as passengers and how they wanna travel and how they like to travel, you also have to start understanding your customer as a user of technology. Because 'Cause we've seen examples where like the Booking.com example I just gave you, where they knew their customer as a technology user because of the type of business they are. And they knew that the majority of their customers came in through that two-way chatbot discussion. I had another customer tried something similar. They thought their customer was a more sophisticated technology user and that they were intuitive enough to put the whole prompt in the search bar. It failed. They shut it down within 30 days. They just weren't engaging it. So the other advice I give to customers to really be successful with these, especially if you're doing something that's consumer facing or guest facing, is I ask them, do you understand your customer as a user of technology? Have you tracked utilization on your mobile app, on your website? Do you really understand how they're using your current capabilities and which capabilities are they fully using and which ones are they ignoring? And you really kind of have to have that understanding as well to see where AI can be employed to take that to the next level.
Greg, thank you so much for taking the time to come onto the show. This has been a really, really insightful look at how the AI is changing the entire travel industry as we know it.
Very fun.
So,
Very fun.
again, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.